This first story comes from Officer Mike Chun, a sheriff's deputy with 12 years of experience working night patrol in a rural county in Georgia. Mike has conducted thousands of traffic stops, responded to countless calls, and knows every back road in his jurisdiction. On a humid August night last year, Mike was running radar on Highway 27, a two-lane road that cuts through farmland and forest. It was around 2:30 a.m., and traffic was almost non-existent, maybe 1 or 2 vehicles per hour. Mike clocked a vehicle doing 68 in a 55 zone, a silver Honda Accord with Georgia plates. Standard traffic stop. Mike activated his lights and initiated the stop. The Accord pulled over immediately and stopped on the shoulder. Mike ran the plates through his system as he always did. The vehicle came back registered to a Jennifer Morrison, address in the next county over, no warrants, clean record. Mike approached the vehicle and made contact with the driver, a woman in her mid-30s, matching the registration. She was polite, apologetic, said she hadn't realized she was speeding. License and registration, please, Mike requested. The woman handed over her license. Jennifer Morrison, matching the name on the registration. Everything checked out. Mike explained he was giving her a warning, reminded her to watch her speed, and sent her on her way. The whole interaction took maybe 5 minutes. Standard traffic stop, no issues. Mike returned to his patrol position and continued running radar. About 30 minutes later, he clocked another vehicle speeding, 68 in a 55, a silver Honda Accord. Mike thought it was coincidental that someone would be going the exact same speed in the same type of car, but he initiated the stop. As the Accord pulled over, Mike noticed it was stopping in the exact same spot as the previous vehicle. Same Georgia plates, same registration, Jennifer Morrison. Rebecca examined the chair. The floorboards in the old house weren't perfectly level. Maybe that was causing it to rock. She stopped the chair's movement and made a mental note to have David check the floor later. But over the following weeks, the family began noticing that the chair was frequently rocking when no one had been near it. Not just slight movements that could be explained by uneven floors or air currents. Substantial rocking, as if someone was actively sitting in it. The children started complaining about it. "Mom, the chair is rocking again," they'd say, sounding more annoyed than frightened. "Can we move it to another room?" Rebecca agreed that they should relocate the chair, but when she and David tried to move it, they discovered it was incredibly heavy, far heavier than it appeared. It took both of them straining to shift it even a few inches. They gave up, deciding they'd deal with it later when they had help. That night, Rebecca woke up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. As she walked down the hallway, she froze. Someone was sitting in the rocking chair. A woman, elderly, wearing what looked like a long, old-fashioned nightgown. Her hair was gray and pulled back, and she was rocking gently, looking out the window toward the street below. Rebecca stood frozen, unable to move or speak. The woman didn't turn to look at her. She just continued rocking, gazing out the window, as if Rebecca wasn't there. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 or 15 seconds, Rebecca backed away slowly and returned to her bedroom. She woke David and told him what she'd seen. David went to check the hallway. The chair was empty, but it was still rocking, slowly coming to a stop as if someone had just stood up from it. "It's an old house," David said, trying to rationalize. "Old houses make sounds, create shadows. Your mind filled in the details because you were half asleep. Sir, your heart is beating. You're alive. We're getting you help. My heart might be beating, but I'm not in there anymore. I can feel it. I'm here with you now, and I need to make sure Margaret gets my message." Jake desperately wanted to tell Maria what was happening, but he didn't want to sound insane. He decided to focus on driving while trying to process what he was experiencing. "Tell her about the roses," Walter continued. "Every year on our anniversary, I planted a new rose bush in the backyard. There are 57 of them now, one for each year we've been married. She thinks I just liked gardening, but each one was a promise that I'd love her for another year. I'll tell her," Jake whispered, "and tell her to check the blue box in my workshop. There's a letter in there and a key to a safety deposit box at the bank. I wrote down everything she needs to know." Jake was approaching the hospital now, just a few blocks away. When he glanced in the mirror again, Walter's apparition was fading. "Thank you, young man. You have a kind heart. That's why I could talk to you." Walter's image smiled sadly. "Take care of Margaret for me. She's going to need help with the back step." Jake pulled into the emergency bay at Harborview. As he put the ambulance in park, he heard Maria's voice, now urgent. "Jake, patient is coding. Get back here." Jake rushed to the back of the ambulance. Walter's heart had stopped again. They worked on him for another 20 minutes in the emergency department, but they couldn't bring him back. Walter Chun was pronounced dead at 12:31 a.m. Jake met with Walter's wife, Margaret, after the pronouncement. He told her what her husband had asked him to relay, feeling foolish but compelled to honor the request. Margaret's reaction confirmed that Jake's experience had been real. She broke down crying and explained that Walter had promised to fix their back step 3 years ago, after she tripped on it and sprained her ankle. He'd kept saying he'd get to it, but he never did. It had become a running joke between them. She'd tease him about it, and he'd promised to fix it next weekend. When Jake mentioned the roses, Margaret's eyes widened. "He told you about the roses?" "I asked him once why he planted so many, and he just said he liked having flowers in the yard. I never knew." "And the blue box in the workshop?" Margaret found it exactly where Walter had described. Inside was a letter to her, written years earlier, explaining his finances, his wishes for his funeral, and 57 reasons why he'd loved being married to her, one for each rose bush. Jake provided me with copies of the patient care report, the time of death documentation, and a written statement from Margaret Chin confirming the details Walter had shared. He also included photos of the rose garden, 57 rose bushes, carefully tended over decades of marriage. Jake still drives ambulances for Seattle Fire Department, but he says he always feels like someone might be sitting in that back seat, waiting to share one last message before they go. Sometimes, it seems, love is so strong that it lets us pause on our way to whatever comes next, just long enough to say goodbye properly. This next story comes from Marcus, who worked as a night orderly at a regional medical center in Pennsylvania. Marcus's job involved transporting patients, moving equipment, and handling various tasks that kept the hospital running during overnight hours. The medical center was a 7-story building, with patient floors on levels 2 through 6. The basement housed the morgue, storage, and mechanical systems. The 7th floor was administrative offices, mostly empty at night. Marcus had been working nights for about 8 months when he started noticing something odd about elevator number 3. The hospital had 4 elevators, but elevator 3 had developed a peculiar habit. During night shifts, it would frequently stop at the 7th floor on its own, despite no one calling for it. The doors would remain open for exactly 30 seconds, then close and return to whatever floor it had been summoned to. Marcus initially assumed it was a mechanical issue and reported it to maintenance several times. The technicians could never find anything wrong with it. The elevator functioned perfectly during the day. The problem only occurred during night shifts, typically between midnight and 4 a.m. After a few weeks of this, Marcus started paying closer attention to elevator 3's behavior. He noticed that it didn't stop at the 7th floor randomly. It only happened when the elevator was transporting patients who had died during the night shift. When Marcus was moving a deceased patient from a room to the morgue, elevator 3 would make its unauthorized stop at the 7th floor. When he was transporting living patients or equipment, the elevator functioned normally. Jennifer made a split-second decision. She went left, off the planned route, scrambling down a steep ravine that she hadn't noticed before. "Jennifer, what are you doing?" her crew boss radioed. "Get to the safety zone." "I don't know, sir. Something told me to go this way." As Jennifer descended into the ravine, she found a small creek bed with minimal vegetation, a natural fire break. She deployed her fire shelter, the aluminum emergency tent that firefighters use as a last resort. Above her, she heard the fire roar over the ridge where her crew had been heading. The sound was like a freight train, consuming everything in its path. After 15 terrifying minutes huddled in her shelter, Jennifer heard voices on the radio. "Jennifer, do you copy? Report your status." "I'm okay. I'm in a ravine about 200 yards west of our original route. I have good cover here." When the fire passed and Jennifer reunited with her crew, they told her what had happened. The safety zone they'd been heading toward had been overrun by the fire. The flames jumped the break and burned right through the area where they would have been sheltered. If they'd reached the safety zone as planned, they likely would have been seriously injured or killed. But Jennifer's decision to go left into the ravine had saved her life. And because she radioed her position, the crew boss made a last-second decision to redirect the entire crew to follow her route. All 19 firefighters survived because Jennifer followed the voice that told her to go left. Later that night, back at base camp, Jennifer mentioned the voice to her crew boss. "Someone told me to go left. Clear as day. I thought maybe it was you on the radio, but it wasn't radio traffic. It was like someone was right next to me." The crew boss went quiet. Then he pulled out his phone and showed Jennifer a photo. "Did the voice sound like this man? Someone's been on the stage. It's set up for some kind of show." The venue manager came in immediately. Together, they reviewed the security footage. The cameras showed James locking up at 11 p.m. the previous night. No one entered the building after that. No one was visible on camera during the night. Yet at 3:17 a.m., something happened that the cameras couldn't quite capture. The footage became distorted, filled with visual noise and artifacts, for exactly 12 minutes. When the picture cleared at 3:29 a.m., the stage was set up exactly as James had found it. The venue manager was deeply unsettled. This has never happened before. Not like this. They decided to research the theater's history more thoroughly. At the Richmond Historical Society, they found something that explained everything and made it more frightening. On November 15, 1925, the Riverside Playhouse hosted its final vaudeville performance before transitioning to talking pictures. The headliner that night was a pianist and comedy performer named Raymond "Ray" Fletcher, a local favorite who had been performing at the Riverside for years. During his performance, Raymond Fletcher suffered a massive heart attack on stage. He collapsed at the piano mid-song and died before medical help could arrive. The audience thought it was part of the act at first, laughing until they realized something was genuinely wrong. The theater held a memorial service for Fletcher on the stage 3 days later. According to newspaper accounts, the service ended with Fletcher's piano playing his signature ragtime melody one final time, with no one at the keys. Multiple witnesses reported this phenomenon, which was attributed to spiritual energy and the power of collective grief. James checked the date. His first encounter with the phantom piano music had been on November 15th, exactly 96 years after Raymond Fletcher's death. The stage setup had appeared on November 18th. Marcus continued working at the hospital for 6 more months after his encounter. Elevator 3 continued its pattern of stopping at the 7th floor when transporting deceased patients. But Marcus never saw Mr. Patterson or the others again. However, he did notice something else. Family members of patients who had passed away sometimes reported dreams or brief visitations from their loved ones. In these encounters, the deceased person always mentioned being in a peaceful place in the hospital, waiting with others who had been well cared for. They specifically mentioned a kind, orderly named Marcus who had treated them with respect and dignity. Marcus eventually left the hospital to work in a different field, but he sent me documentation of the elevator maintenance records, showing the repeated reports of mechanical issues that were never resolved. He also provided copies of the historical records about the 7th floor's conversion and the unexplained deaths in room 717. Sometimes, it seems, the boundary between life and death isn't as clear as we'd like to believe. And sometimes, those who have crossed that boundary want to express their gratitude to those who showed them kindness in their final moments. This third story is the hardest one for me to share, and I'll warn you now that it involves children. If you're sensitive to content involving pediatric patients, you may want to skip ahead to the final story. This comes from Jennifer, a pediatric nurse who worked at a children's hospital in Denver. Jennifer had been working in pediatric care for 12 years, specializing in critical care for seriously ill children. It's one of the most emotionally demanding jobs in healthcare, and Jennifer was exceptionally good at it. The children's hospital where Jennifer worked had a special ward for terminally ill patients, children who were receiving palliative care rather than curative treatment. This ward was designed to be as comfortable and home-like as possible, with family sleeping areas, play spaces, and a staff trained specifically in end-of-life care for children. Jennifer often worked the night shift in this ward, from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Night shifts in pediatric palliative care are unique. They're quieter, more peaceful, but also heavy with the weight of families spending what might be their final nights with their children. In the spring of last year, Jennifer was caring for a 7-year-old boy named Tommy who was in the final stages of leukemia. Tommy had been in the hospital for several weeks, and Jennifer had become very attached to him. He was brave, funny, and despite his illness, he always tried to cheer up the other children in the ward. Tommy's room was at the end of the hall, room 314. Across the hall in room 313 was Emma, a 5-year-old girl with a rare genetic condition. The two children had become friends, and their families had grown close during their parallel journeys. On a Tuesday night in April, Tommy passed away peacefully in his sleep around 2:30 a.m. His family was with him, and Jennifer was there to help them through those final moments. It was heartbreaking, but as peaceful as such a situation could be. Long pause, then 2 beeps. Okay, stay where you are. Officers are on their way. Is the person who might hurt you in the same room as you right now? 1 for yes, 2 for no. Instead of beeps, Rachel heard something that made her blood run cold. A child's voice, very faint, as if coming from far away. "Mommy, why won't you answer me?" Rachel felt her heart race. "Hello? Is there a child there? If you can hear me, I need you to respond." "Mommy, you're scaring me. Why are you just standing there?" Rachel could hear footsteps, small ones, like a child walking around. "Mommy, there are people at the door. Should I let them in?" Rachel immediately radioed the responding officers. "Unit 12, approach with extreme caution. We have a child at the residence, adult caller unable to speak, possible domestic situation in progress." Through the phone, Rachel could hear knocking and police officers identifying themselves. Then she heard the child's voice again. "Mommy, the police want to come in. Why won't you move?" Rachel heard the front door open and officers entering the house. Unit 12, we're inside the residence, came the radio call. "We have a situation here. Requesting detective unit and coroner." Rachel's heart sank. In domestic violence situations, calls for the coroner usually meant they were too late. But what the officers found was far more disturbing than a typical domestic violence case. They found a woman standing in the middle of the living room, completely motionless, staring straight ahead. She was alive, breathing, but completely unresponsive to any stimulus. No injuries, no signs of struggle, no indication of what had caused her catatonic state. More importantly, there was no child in the house. The woman was identified as Jennifer Walsh, a single mother who lived alone. According to neighbors, she had a 4-year-old daughter named Emma, but Emma had died in a car accident 6 months earlier. Jennifer had been found in the exact position the officers described many times before. Neighbors reported that for the past month, they had occasionally seen Jennifer standing motionless in her living room for hours at a time, always in the same spot, always staring in the same direction. The direction she was staring was toward Emma's bedroom, which Jennifer had left exactly as it was when Emma died. Rachel stayed on the line during the entire police investigation, and she could hear the child's voice throughout. "Why won't Mommy play with me anymore? I miss Mommy's hugs. Tell Mommy I'm not scared of the dark anymore." The officers at the scene couldn't hear the child's voice. Only Rachel, through the phone line, could hear Emma talking. Jennifer was taken to a hospital for psychological evaluation. The doctors determined that she was suffering from severe catatonic depression, likely triggered by the anniversary of her daughter's death approaching. But here's what still haunts Rachel. The phone call had lasted for over an hour, with Emma's voice coming through clearly the entire time. When police examined the phone that made the call, they found it in Emma's bedroom, sitting on her small desk next to her coloring books. She's not scary, Mama. She looks happy. She looks like she loves us. Elena provided me with the original photograph, professionally authenticated as genuine with no manipulation. Comparison images of Catherine from the 1940s. Expert analysis reports confirming no digital trickery or photographic anomalies. Family documents and letters referencing Catherine's deathbed promise. And witness statements from people who were at the 1995 birthday party confirming they saw no one matching Catherine's description. Sometimes, it seems, love and devotion are stronger than death. Catherine promised she'd never leave her family, that she'd watch over them, that she'd be there for important moments. And in that photograph from 1995, captured by chance on a disposable camera at a child's birthday party, she kept her promise. Elena has the photograph framed now, displayed in her living room. She says it's a reminder that family bonds transcend death, that those who loved us in life continue to watch over us, even when we can't see them. And maybe, just maybe, they're there at our celebrations, sharing in our joy, letting us know through small, impossible moments that love never truly dies.